Right. And this may be semantics depending on the way you look at it, but this wasn't a Hubert Davis decision. Like, he didn't go into the meeting and say, "We don't want you at Carolina." That's not how this happened. Seth made a decision, a mature decision on his own that he thought moving on was the best for him. And I think everyone can respect that when you feel like you're in a situation where you need to get better and it's not at where you are, you can move on. I think everyone can respect that. So I don't want people to think that, like, why didn't Hubert Davis try to keep him? Obviously, he did. I can share this now. I think it's been a year, but when the season ended last year, after the NIT and all that stuff, we were sourcing information, trying to figure out who was what and what was going to happen. And pretty early on, we were told that there were a certain number of players. I won't give the number, but I'll say that Seth was one of them that was an absolute have to have back, by any means necessary. And so it's not as if UNC didn't value him. I think maybe, again, how much they valued him and how much he valued what he did, and the gap in between those two things maybe is where the differences lay in the reason he's transferring. But again, that's kind of college basketball now, and I think moving it forward for UNC, as much as everyone likes Seth, Carolina now has an opportunity to change the roster. It, improve maybe is difficult for me considering what how I feel about what Seth brought, but improve slash change the roster through the portal the same way that they did last year. It takes players and it gives players too. So that's the good thing, I guess, about the portal.
I'll throw this out to you, Cheryl, before we start talking about what comes next at that position. For the folks that are frustrated about the situation, I understand the emotion. I would say if it goes farther than just a surface level emotion, I would ask this question: what could Hubert Davis or Seth Trimble, what should they have done differently? And I don't think there's an answer to that, right? Like I don't think there's a realistic answer for that, and I think that's basically where folks should walk away. Like it's just not it can't work here, and if it can't work here, then everybody's got to do what's best for themselves. And so again, I real talk, Cheryl, I'm gonna root like hell for that kid wherever he goes. I mean,
Oh,
like
100%. Yeah.
he could be wearing a ISIS Tech shirt next year, and I would have a hard time not pulling for him because he's that good of a kid and that from that that nice of a family. And I didn't have half the role with them that you did, obviously. So you mentioned it, and shout out to the 500 folks that are in here with us live tonight on a random Tuesday, talking about North Carolina's first man off the bench, Seth Trimble, uh, Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, departing the program. Appreciate all y'all being here. Sherelle, what's next? Right. Obviously, there's now a scholarship open that that wasn't definitively open prior to today. So, what do you think Hubert Davis's strategy may be moving toward or moving forward with having this scholarship available for Seth Trimble?
I'll answer that one second, but I see a comment I want to respond to. It says from Emery Ashley. It says, "I get that this may be the best decision for Seth, but is this the best for UNC?" Whether or not it's the best for UNC shouldn't factor into Seth's decision making. Again, the offseason is about the player, in season is about the team. I think he held his end of the bargain up pretty good. So I don't think the two really mesh, like the question, whether those two are congruent, I don't think really matters. But as far as what's next, I think we've shared on the premium board. For those who aren't subscribers, please go subscribe. Kind of the
Wait, wait, wait,
names
wait, wait,
that.
wait, wait. For those of you
Go
who
ahead.
aren't subscribers, for those of you who aren't subscribers but are in a live podcast talking about somebody entering the transfer portal, let's all take a second and judge those people silently. Okay. Judgment over. Continue, sir.
Yeah, so we've shared kind of portal names to know, or folks that they have contacted, and I think we'll see exactly what they want to do in the backcourt. Again, a lot of this hinges on what RJ Davis decides. Right now, as things stand, if RJ were to leave, then Elliot Cadeau, presuming he's back, which we think he is, and Ian Jackson would kind of be the only guards on the roster. I think Drake Powell could play some at the two, but that's a really thin backcourt. Now, if RJ Davis decides to return, then you have a situation where you're basically just subbing out Seth Trimble for Ian Jackson. It's from a rotation standpoint because last year, there were 3 guards and they played almost 100% of the minutes. Not quite, but Wojcik played probably the first 8 or 9 games, pretty significant minutes, and then not much, basically until Alabama.
Whenever it took Cadeau, essentially that was Wojcik's minutes.
Right. So it was Cadeau, Davis, and Trimble in the backcourt for the majority of the time. So with no additions and presume RJ were to return, then you kind of have a similar 3-guard rotation. Now, if Davis leaves, then obviously they're going to have to go into the portal and get a guard. I don't think we'll know the answer to that for a little bit. So that's kind of where things stand. I think we're still a lot of stuff hinges on the overall roster on the decisions of Harrison Ingram and RJ Davis. So that's kind of where things stand. I would caution for those of you who don't normally listen to Coast, my favorite portal saying when it comes to UNC is that silence does not mean inaction. So they are doing stuff, just Hubert Davis and really going back to Roy Williams. They have decided or made a choice that they're going to operate very quietly and we'll find stuff out when we find stuff out. Now, part of our job is to find some of that stuff out, and I think we do a decent job of that, but we can't find out everything. So there are players, more than likely, outside of the ones that we've introduced as portal names to know that they are talking to, and as we're able to confirm that, we'll share it. But a lot going on, still some moving pieces, especially with RJ Davis and Harrison Ingram, and then with some of the names to know and whether or not those guys take visits and how quickly they want their recruitments to go. So a lot to be done. Important dates to remember, Joey, since again we're kind of going over everything. May 1st is when the transfer portal closes. So that does not mean that players who are entered have to make a decision by then. They just have to have their names into the portal by then. So that should be, if you're looking at this as kind of on a timeline, May 1st is the first time you should take a snapshot and say, okay, this might be what the Carolina roster looks like, because then you'll know none of the undergraduates can transfer out, and they should be there. So that's the first step. After that, the NBA Combine and the G League Combine are in mid-May, the same week that coaches can be on the road for EYBL and Adidas and all the AAU tournaments. So that's another kind of moment in time, because if a player is in the draft and doesn't perform well at the Combine or the G League Combine, they have until the end of May to withdraw from the NBA draft, which is how Carolina got involved with players like Matthew Mayer from Baylor, Pete Nance, who ended up committing, Dawson Garcia, who ended up committing. All those guys went through the pre-draft process and pulled their names out towards the end. So after, I guess it's May 30th, there's another group of players who probably could become available. So they will entertain those. Then mid-June, when the second summer session starts, typically the week after Father's Day, that's when you can take another snapshot and say, all right, these 10 or 11 or 12 or however many guys it is are on campus. After that, it's not quite final because there are still some players who could enter because of coach firings or resignations or whatever. After that is basically fall class starts, and that is in late August. That's when we are 100% sure, no doubt about it, what the roster will look like. So each moment in time, May 1st, June 1st, let's just call it June 24th. Those are the dates you need to look at to take snapshots.